Good morning, everybody. How are you? Stuart McNamara is my name. I don't own a whiskey company. I don't make money from whiskey. I'm a whiskey blogger. And I suppose the thing about whiskey bloggers is that we're kind of evangelists. We're kind of the unsung heroes of the craft beer world and of the whiskey world and whatever. So really, I've been asked here today on the basis of an article I wrote recently about protecting the Irish whiskey industry. So I'm not saying I'm the expert. I also refer to myself as an aficionado, somebody who's passionate about it, enthusiastic, and who cares. So these are just some thoughts that I have that may be helpful. And given the fact that what I love about Irish whiskey is it's not just a drink, it's the craft, the heritage, the history, the science, all of these things that come together to make it something special. And I'm sure that we have a lot of craft brewers here, and I think you'll probably identify with that sentiment as well. So perhaps what I'm saying may be of interest to the craft brewers as well. I'll step out here just so I don't have to wear my glasses, if that's okay. The Irish whiskey boom, okay. What we need to do really is look back at the past, because there was a previous Irish whiskey boom, and it was in the 1900s. Okay? The current Irish whiskey boom, we're looking at shares to rise by 300% in coming years. Okay? We have lots of new distilleries and lots of innovation going on, and you know, it's not as tight an industry as it used to be. The last whiskey boom was in the 1900s. Okay? Irish whiskey production in the early 1900s, believe it or not, grew by 400%. Okay? And at that stage, Irish whiskey was actually more popular than Scotch on the east coast of America. And then everybody knows that Prohibition happened, but what a lot of people don't realise is that the real victims of Prohibition were Irish and bourbon whiskey. Scotch whiskey largely survived because the only one that they could bootleg was the Irish and the bourbon. The bootleggers producing the fake whiskey for sale during that 10 or so years in America were unable to replicate the peatiness of Scotch. So all of the ersatz, or the fake bootleg whiskey, was passed off as Irish or bourbon, and our reputation was in tatters at the end of that period. Okay. You follow that at the end of Prohibition then, with the Irish trade war with the UK, a spat over land annuities. And that meant then that as Scotch got going again, we lost one of our major markets in the UK. So the next thing, Scotch is growing, and Ireland has not only been hammered by Prohibition, but it's been hammered by ourselves. Follow the UK trade war, and you end up with World War II. Lots of American GIs coming across into the UK, or into Britain, and they go looking for whiskey. The whiskey they get is Scotch, because there's no Irish available. And that's the taste they bring back with them. And if you think of the Mad Men generation, you're probably all marketeers here and fans of Mad Men. And I remember that generation being a kid, you know, because my parents were that generation. And it's all Scotch to drinking. Why? Because all the guys and people in Mad Men were all young people during World War II. And that's the taste they brought back with them. And that's how Scotch got its hold in the States. The other element was, and not a lot of people know this, a guy called William Ross. He looks like a stern guy. He's about 6'4" and one of the nicest guys going, apparently. Really, really nice guy. Started off in the Scotch Distilling Company as a young clerk and worked his way up to being the CEO, the head man. And what he did was he started this kind of benign dictatorship within the Scotch whisky industry. As he got into power, he started buying up all the smaller distilleries, closing down the non-efficient ones. And what the other thing he did was he ended over production of Scotch whisky, which was flooding the market. At that stage, you had Scotch companies. They had so much production that they were actually buying their own stock to inflate, their price of the stock exchange. He came in as a single-handed, benign dictator, and he basically galvanized the Scotch industry, got rid of all the deadwood, a lot of victims, but it's one of the key factors in how the Scotch whisky industry survived during the early 1900s and then on into the 40s. And you see there that he died in 1944. So he was from 1862 to 1944. So his heyday really were the early 1900s up to World War II, when he was kind of an elder lemon still dispensing advice. Okay. Another thing there, what is whiskey? A key thing in the Scotch whisky industry was that, as you know, the Scotch had used an Irish invention, the coffee still by N.A.'s Coffee, to start producing cheaper grain spirit. Okay, which could be used to dilute the kind of the normal pot still of Ireland and Scotland into the blended whiskies which were developed at that time. And one of the things we managed to do was get grain spirit Okay, the product of a column or coffee still recognised as whiskey. Because up until then there was kind of a, is it whiskey or is it not? And you also saw the seeds of putting in the rules in on top of whiskey as it must be matured for 3 years. So this is the guy who really saved the Scotch whisky industry back where it is today. Irish distillers, okay, as the Irish whisky industry faded, Irish distillers largely copied the Ross model, whether intentionally or not, in the 1970s, okay? And we saw all the small distilleries being closed and amalgamated and everything being focused down in Cork where it is today. And I must say they did a damn good job, a fantastic job. And they would still be doing, and they are still doing a good job, but what happened then was cooling. A positive disruptive force came into the market and shook everything up. Now the next thing, we have a lot of whiskey available for a lot of small companies who want, and that's why we get all the startup labels. I'm not going to mention any of them, but you know them all here. Okay? Lots of startup labels, and most of these are using buffer stock that was maybe probably originally from cooling to get them going over the hump years in the first 2 years. Okay? And the whisky world in Ireland has got its act together in recent years now. Okay? We have the Irish Whisky Association has been founded, and we're looking at legal protection for Irish whisky. You have SI 316 of 215. Now that's not the protection, that's the instrument that gives power to the Irish government, the Department of Agriculture, to go after people who are copying Irish whisky or passing off stuff as Irish whisky. So in coming years we're going to see a crackdown on stuff being sold out in the Far East and out in eastern and other parts of the world, and we'll see kind of the quality of Irish whisky being reinforced. And I've been told by the Irish Whisky Association in my research that there will be robust enforcement of this as they go. Okay. Another element that's come in with the Irish Whisky Association is the element of co-opetition. You all heard of that? I'll talk to you about it later. Change of tack. Car stories. I recently turned 50, okay? That's my dad's old car, and that's a car I grew up in the 60s. It's a Jaguar Mark II. Lots of wood and leather. It was the BMW 3 Series of its time, loved by the Cray twins, bank robbers, cops. You saw it in Sweeney. It was the quintessential, everything that was best about a British car. So what do you think about when you think about a British car now? Okay? Where's all the wood and leather, the Triumph, the wind in your hair, the wire wheels? What happened was, all the British companies were amalgamated into British Leyland with the little red arrow there, right? My dad stopped buying Jaguars at that stage because they started putting plastic seats and plastic dashboards into them. And that's not why people buy a Jaguar. Okay? What do you think of anything about Italian cars? Okay, those of us of my age. That's the car my mum used to drive. It's the car I learned to drive. I spent more time pushing it than I did driving it. Trying to get it started in the wet weather. Of course, there's the other side. Okay, but you know, is that what we think of when we think of Italian cars? Maybe it is now. What do you think about when you think about Japanese cars? Boring, reliable, super engines, super gearbox, super electrics, they don't give trouble. Okay? It's wheels, it gets you from A to B. What about German cars? Solid, powerful, reliable, quality. Okay? And look at all those marks there. Audi, Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Volkswagen, Opel. Okay? Anyone see where we're going with this? What kind of car is Irish whisky? Okay? And that's the point of my whole talk today, that I think it's time that we stop thinking about brands. Okay? Now brands are very important to the brand manager. Now I'm not going to mention one brand against the other, so I'll come up with a brand, we'll call it Puka Whiskey. And Puka make pot still whiskey, they make blended whiskey, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, whatever, okay? So I have to stop thinking about selling Puka whiskey. Well, you know, I keep thinking about it, but I also I need to think about selling Irish whiskey, okay? Because we're out there in a crowded market. The Scotch are still the dominant force. We may be rising and they may be stalled a bit, but they are still the dominant force. And I'll tell you, West is coming down the tracks very fast because they were all over Ireland for the last 2 weeks, Japanese. And the Japanese are actually closer to what we do. They take what other people do, they reverse engineer, they innovate it, and they do it better than anybody else. So watch that space with Japanese whiskey. So we really have to decide that Irish whiskey, you know, has the best of Japanese innovation, Italian style, German bodywork, and Irish spirit. And that's the thing that makes us different. But it's really, I think, where, as a blogger, where we need to position Irish whiskey. We have a whiskey boom. And You know, we're just coming out of the last boom we had in Ireland, the Celtic Tiger, you know, and what I'm awfully afraid of is that with all of this stuff going on, all of this excitement and a little lack of control because we're small operators, are we going to have a whiskey tiger? Okay. I've seen some worrying events in recent years, and I'm not going to go into them now, but in terms of marketing, okay, in terms of what people are saying is whiskey, and how people are projecting whiskey. I mean, you know, I've seen major companies and small companies promoting shots in the States. You know, Tiger, 96% proof whiskey, making crazy. Okay, that's not the market we want to go after with Irish whiskey. Look at Arthur's Day, a complete disaster. Very successful for the people at the time, but what did it do to the category? What did it do to the drinks industry in Ireland? Okay, you know, I've seen other you know, as a blogger for the last 10 years, you know, I'm always looking for news and events. And the news and events that I've had from one company in recent years has all been about rock bands and wooden headphones. Okay, thankfully that company is under new management, and I never thought I'd see the day when I'd be delighted that one of the most historic Irish whiskey companies has been run by a tequila company. But you know what? I've spoken to the tequila company, and they get what Irish whiskey is about. I promise you that. That's my personal opinion, but talking to the guys taking over Bushmills lately, there's good things coming. Pernod Ricard. I've been lucky enough to be down in Middleton on many occasions. I get no sense that it is Pernod Ricard. It's Irish distillers. These are people, and they're from all over the world, but they're working in there. I wrote an article there last year called A Village in Spirit, because that's really the impression I get. Now, maybe they're fooling me, and there's a whole load of actors out there who roll out, but I don't think so. You know, that Pernod Ricard Irish distillery get what it is to be about Irish whiskey. And so do William Grant. Tomorrow night I'll be at the first birthday party for Tullamore Dew Distillery. In the last year, I've met the people from Grant's, and everybody's saying, oh no, Scotch taking over Irish. No. These people get what Irish whiskey is about. And so do lots and lots of the smaller companies coming up, and really that's what we need to foster. A quick story. I'll tell you about the projects that myself and a couple of other whiskey bloggers are putting together in the next phase of this, okay? But one of the things that we're looking at is an Irish Whiskey Annual, okay? And we've Gillen Macmillan, or a big publishing house, approached us and asked us to do this, and we're talking to the companies about it. But I was explaining to a well-known brand ambassador in Ireland. I said, look, and you know, we'd love you to be on board, because then it's something you can give out to your brand ambassadors. You know, you have 20 brand ambassadors around the world, and you can give this out to them, and it tells them all about Tullamore, its features, or whatever in it, you know. And what they were saying is, yeah, but it's also telling them about Pernod Ricard and Irish distillers and Bushmills and that. Yeah, what I said, but their brand ambassadors are also telling their people about you. So we have to get away from this thing of thinking about just our brand. The rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that's where we need to go. So, the modern perception of Irish whiskey, okay, the new legal protection, okay, that gives legal protection of Irish whiskey, but it's going to protect our name, our brand, our reputation, our public perception, at home and abroad. And I would posit that we need a single, strong, trusted voice for Irish whiskey, okay? And I'm not talking about the Irish Whiskey Association, who are brilliant, but their job really is on the back end side of things, really. I would say that we need to move out with a different idea, okay? So what's required for a voice, single voice for Irish whiskey? It needs a global reach, strong and trusted leadership, fair legal representation. It needs to be dynamic and agile, innovative, imaginative. Okay, and it needs, you know, we need to be able to identify and seize and exploit opportunities as they happen. Okay, we can't wait for board meetings that happen in 2 or 3 months. Okay, in other words, we need a leader of the new Irish whiskey consumer tribe, because that's what we're starting to build, is a consumer tribe of Irish whiskey drinkers. Okay, and what we're looking at is that there will be a parent website, international websites written by local bloggers in France and Germany and Russia and China. Okay, social media that goes with it. Okay, Irish whiskey books and Irish whiskey educational tools. So myself and a couple of other whiskey bloggers, we know this. About 2 years ago, the Whiskey.com sold for $3.1 million, KY. And we wondered who owns IrishWhiskey.com, and we found who owned it. And it was an American domain investor who had it since 1990 something. And it took us 2 years. So we went to all the whiskey companies and we said, guys, this is there. But nobody would take it because they all said, no, we just do our brand. So we got together and we developed it. And it took us 2 years of hard work. And it took us a lot of money, which we did. But it's done. We got IrishWhiskey.com. The site is up for the last year. It's run by a volunteer crew of bloggers. I'm the editor. Okay. All whiskies are equal on it. All member articles that we take are equal. Okay. And we have independent articles by our own staff and guest bloggers. Our aim is to make this the best damn Irish whiskey site in the world. We've secured international sites. You can see them all there. IrishWhiskey.France, China, Japan, Russia, Latvia, gateway to Europe. We've secured all of those. Okay, because nobody else was going to do it, so we did. We launched our first French whiskey site there a few weeks ago. It's completely in French language. All the reviews are in French. We have a French whiskey blogger, Anne-Sophie Bichot, who is shortlisted to the top 10 whiskey bloggers in the US. Young lady, did her master's degree in Scotland, and we've converted her from Scottish to Irish. Okay. We have 3 levels of tourism sites that we're looking at. We have the Irish Whiskey Way, which will be the top 20 tourism venues in Ireland connected with whiskey. Entry is free, no charge. It's a blue guide for Irish whiskey. We have an Irish Whiskey Trail, which is, a Dublin Whiskey Trail, which is our smartphone app which we launched last week. It's in beta mode, and we're testing with the Irish Whiskey Museum, Searson's Pub, the Loop, and a couple of other pubs in Dublin, and we've invited in the distilleries as well. Again, the listings are free, and it's something that we're hoping to develop over the next 2 weeks. And then the last one there is Irish Whiskey Pub. Every Irish whiskey pub that specialises in Irish whiskey around the world. Okay, we get the brand ambassadors populated, and then we have a database of every pub in the world selling Irish whiskey. And again, a smartphone app, so when you land in some place, you can say, where can I get my yellow spot, green spot, bush spot, whatever. Hookah scale is an innovative scale we've developed to act as a handrail for people who are beginners to whiskey as to how they move from that entry-level whiskey on to the next level. Okay. And then we have some other ones like Irish Whiskey Day, the Scotch model rather than the Irish Day model. We're looking at an Irish Whiskey Glass, we're working with Galway Crystal on that. And we've even been invited to do the Edinburgh and Glasgow Whiskey Trail based on the initial review of our smartphone app. Last thought, before I go, I think that hopefully you've got the idea of what I'm saying about Irish whiskey. We need to think about Irish whiskey as well as your own individual brand. But also we've seen the growth of Irish vodka and Irish gin, really high quality products. Okay, so perhaps it's time we started thinking about an Irish distilled brand. Okay, as well. A lot of the new distilleries started making gin to actually buffer their cash flow, but it's become a success. And like craft beers, it's become a product and a brand in its own right. So maybe we start to need to think about that as well. So that's it, really. I suppose the main point I have really is that we need to think together, and the responsibility I'm suggesting on the big companies to be, okay, and support joint initiatives. And my team and IrishWhiskey.com are always at your disposal. We're delighted to help in any way we can. Thank you very much.